I'll tell you a story about a teenager. He was 17 years old, and he had been through a lot. He didn't have a good relationship with his siblings. In fact, they wanted to kill him. They almost killed him. And then in the end, they sold him into slavery. And you know who I'm talking about? They saw the musical. Yeah, I know. It is a musical, yeah. Anyways, so Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, he had a hard life. You know, one day he's out in the field shepherding with his father, and everything's beautiful, and they're philosophizing, and they're studying the secrets of the universe together. That's why they like to hang out, and the patriarchs like to hang out in the field, so they could philosophize and think. And he's living this slow-paced, idyllic life. And then the next day, his own brothers turn on him. He's sold into slavery. He goes to this crazy place. I mean, Egypt was just corrupt, and he goes from living in a total rural area to this metropolis, this bustling metropolis, and it's full of all types of lewdness. And then over there, he's a slave, and then he's exposed to all types of temptation, and he's a very, very handsome young man, and everyone notices. That's the first thing everyone notices about him, and he's getting all this attention for his looks. And you know, you think about this. Here's a kid ripped away from his home, from the stability of his home. He's been through hell. Really, he's been through hell. And I'm not trying to humanize the Oves, and I'm not trying to psychologically analyze. That's far be it from me. But I'm saying is, if we could relate to this story for ourselves, just for our own use, to try to put ourselves, I'm not trying to put Yosef into our psychology, but I'm trying to put our psychology into his story and say, you know, how would you feel if that were your situation? You're young, your life is totally destabilized, you're in a place of rampant temptation. You have nothing, you're a slave, so you have no rights and you have no respect, and the only attention you're getting is for your physical appearance, and people think you're beautiful, and these people don't have very good morals and very good boundaries. And you know, you can imagine that combination of factors, and you're 17 years old. You know, you can imagine that combination of factors, how that wouldn't really, you know, that wouldn't really go too well. You wouldn't want a 17-year-old to be in a situation like that. And so it's interesting, we're learning the Gemara Sota right now. There's the Agadata over there that speaks about this, tells this story about Yosef. And it says it came to a point of, it was too difficult for him. And he had a lot of rationalizations, and he said, you know, who's going to know? And his master's wife was pursuing him for an illicit relationship. And he had all these rationalizations. Who's going to know? And, you know, how bad is it when I'm a slave? It's not like I'm a classy person. It's not like I'm a respectable person. I have nothing really to lose. I don't have a reputation over here. So he's about to succumb. At least it was Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. But at any rate, at least according to one understanding of the story, he's about to succumb. And what stops him? He sees, this is what the Gemara says, he sees the image of his father. He sees the image of his father, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our patriarch. And then he's able to stop. And it's an interesting story. Like, again, I'm not trying to humanize Yosef's story. I can't psychologically analyze the Oves. But I'm just saying, if I were to try to put myself in that position and try to relate to that feeling of being a totally destabilized, broken, downtrodden young person who's totally disconnected from anything that he's ever known, full of pain. I mean, Your brothers tried to kill you. They turned on you. They hated you to that degree. You're the lowest level of society. All of a sudden you're being exposed to all this stuff, this confusing stuff, and then you have an opportunity for some type of comfort or distraction. The easiest comfort and distraction, physical pleasure, and attention. Someone's giving you attention. Somebody's liking you, even if it's for a very shallow reason, but they're liking you, they're validating you. And it's an escape. It's an escape. And it seems so reasonable that would be almost an inevitability that the 17-year-old is going to succumb, and yet he doesn't. And what stops him? What are we told stops him? He sees the image of his father. Why is this what stops him? So, I'll tell you a couple explanations that I heard, and they're both, I think, really informative. One of them is from the emissary Yankiv, of Yankiv Kamenetsky. And he says something just very, it's like obvious after you hear it, but he says, can you imagine the relationship that Yankov Avinu must have cultivated with his son, with Yosef, in order that the image of him should give him that power to refrain from sin? In other words, it's in a context. It's in a context. It's not out of nowhere. You can infer from this story that their connection must have been pretty tight. There must have been a pretty strong bond. And Yosef must have felt that his father's presence was meaningful to him. I mean, it's not his real father. It was an image of his father. It's an image. What's the image going to do? He can't tackle you. He can't do anything. It was the meaning, what it represented to him, that this relationship was significant enough to him that it stopped him and it gave him the power to overcome. So, from this you can learn that the greatest power that a parent has in adding to the moral strength of their child is cultivating enough of a connection that when your child thinks of you, that gives them strength. That's something that means something to them. Because otherwise, why would it give him that push? There's a saying in education, which I hate. I don't hate it, but I hate that it's true. Which is I'll tell you why I hate that it's true. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. It's totally true, and it's not fair. Because really, as long as I'm saying something true, that should be good enough. But in reality, you can say things that are true, and if people don't think that you're compassionate, people don't think that you relate to them, if people don't think that you have their best interests at heart, they won't listen to you even though everything you're saying is true. You know that? It's very frustrating. What difference does it make if I'm a nice guy? What difference does it make if I've invested in the relationship? I said something true, you should accept it. And you know what? On paper, that's 100% true. But in reality, human beings don't work that way. Human beings don't work that way. In fact, human beings will take into account more the emotional significance of the relationship than the intelligence of the person who's delivering the message. To the extent that when they feel loved and accepted by somebody, they'll even listen to and believe stupid things that person tells them. In contrast, somebody can be saying the smartest things in the world, but if you don't feel that they care about you, you dismiss it. It's not fair, but that's human nature. So imagine, again, not to humanize the obvious, but to put ourselves in that situation so we can learn something from it for ourselves. Imagine you as a father having that power that when your child is in a moment of moral crisis and he has every reason emotionally to not be able to overcome it, that thinking about you is what strengthens him to be able to overcome. That didn't come out of nowhere. That must mean that there's a lot of currency in that relationship. And that currency must have come through investing time and effort, and it was conversations that you had, and it was experiences that you shared. Otherwise, out of the blue, it's not going to make a difference. Maybe even to the contrary. Oh, there's that judgmental jerk here to guilt me. I'll show you how bad I am. But the fact, again, it was just an image. The fact that the image had that psychological effect, you're talking about a father who really connected to his child. So that's one perspective. I'll tell you another explanation of that same story. And it's not in contradiction, actually. One complements the other. They build on each other. The Torah tells us that when Yosef resisted, it actually uses a word, v'yamoin. V'yamoin means he refused. And if you know the cantillation marks, the trop, it has a shalshelis, which means a chain. It's shaped like a chain. And it's sung like a double pauser. It's like a very dramatic contralto. So he refused. V'yamoin, v'yamoin, you know, like dramatic. It was a big deal. What I'm saying is it wasn't like, nah. It was like, he had to struggle. Took a lot of effort. So I heard from the Mashpia, Reb Wolf Greenglass, all of a shalom, but it's in the name of the Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, that v'yamoin, Yosef refused, is an acronym. It's a Rosh Tevis. V'yamoin is V'yar Yosef Maris Aviv Negdoi, which means, and Yosef saw the image of his father in front of him. They're going to say, that I know. You told me. That's the Gemara. Seita, Daf Lamed Vav. He saw the image of his father. Yeah. No. It's a little deeper than that. V'yar Yosef Maris Aviv Negdoi. Joseph saw the image of his father in front of him. You got to translate it a little bit differently. Not an image of his father, but an image of himself held by his father. Maris Aviv Negdoi means he saw himself at that moment the way his father saw him. So at the moment of moral challenge, moral crisis, and he needed strength, what gave him strength? He had a glimpse of how his father saw him. And when he saw himself the way his father saw him, he knew he was strong enough to overcome. Incredible idea here. That the way we look at our children gives them a self-concept which they bring with them even when we're not there to tell them the right thing to do. Yosef was far away from his father, but his father had implanted within him a self-concept. Think about how powerful that is, to teach somebody how to have an accurate opinion of their own greatness. Because when you teach somebody who they are, when you literally give somebody their identity in a positive way, you gave them their identity? That's huge. You told someone who they are? There's a saying, wherever you go, there you are. So think about it. Wherever you go, there you are. You bring you with you, for better or for worse. If a parent taught you that what you are is strong and good and capable, you bring that with you into all of the situations of life, into every challenge. Hey, this is Shais Taub. You were just watching a clip from this class. If you want to get the full context, the full class that this clip that you just watched was from, you watch right here. Click right here. Here.